The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline. The Existential Crisis Hotline.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Existential Crisis Hotline, and it's Thursday night. Yes, Thursday night. And I found a really cool video to look at tonight. But first, I got to show you this crazy tweet. Actually, I don't know where I can find it. Let me see if I can find it first. From Donald Trump. It's pretty crazy. Where is it? Hold on, I think I sent it to somebody. Let me check. There it is. I don't know what he's talking about. He said the communists... Let me put my mic over here. The communists are finally making their move. I've been waiting and preparing for this for a long time. It's easy to be a communist. All you have to do is say, I'll give you everything. But that means you're taking it away from others that have earned it. Over thousands of years, that ideology has not worked once. The game is on. Enjoy watching. What is he referring to? I don't know. Is he talking about Cuba? I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. I just thought that was weird. I was like, what is going on? Quick update also. So there was no alien abduction at the Brazil game last night. A little disappointing. That psychic said that there was going to be psychic Brazil. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, Brazilian psychic said yesterday that a UFO mothership was going to appear over the Hard Rock Stadium during Brazil versus Scotland at the World Cup yesterday. She said that players, officials, hundreds of fans could be abducted, all being before returned, all live on TV. Didn't happen though. Let's see. Did she say something?
Invadindo o campo de futebol em Miami e eu via os jogadores nitidamente sendo carregados.
Hold on. What did she say in the beginning? A dream.
Alienígenas invadindo o campo de futebol em Miami e eu via os jogadores nitidamente sendo carregado pela primeira nave que chegava. A nave se levantava, chegava a nave mãe, uma nave muito maior, e levava milhares de pessoas do campo de futebol.
So basically, thousands of people were taken. The whole soccer team was taken. And why? Why would aliens do that? It just, lady, you had a dream, okay? Okay, you had a dream. You dreamed. It's like, what's crazy to me though is that it was like reported on by everybody. Like, why is this being reported on? Okay, somebody had a dream the aliens were going to abduct people from a soccer match. And yet it was like everybody was talking about it. I'm even talking about it now. And it was weird. I was like, I wonder if people are actually hoping, oh, like maybe it did happen. Look, here you go. Oh, shit. I guess I missed this. Oh, that's too bad. I don't know. This might be AI, but I'm not sure. It looks pretty real. Well, they even had the military there. I mean, so much so, I saw a tweet from the Miami International Airport, like their official Twitter account, X account, saying that they were closing the airspace because of unusual air traffic. Like, it's just so weird with the whole alien UFO stuff going on. We've talked about that a lot on these streams. And I don't know how to describe it. It's like there's something weird going on. Not that there's aliens going to invade. That it's like in everyone's mind now this whole meme about UFOs and aliens. It's like it's become totally mainstream to the point where even Polymarket, everybody's reporting on this woman saying this, when it's just a woman who claims to be psychic saying she had a dream, you know? So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Okay, so anyways, I found this really cool video. I've only watched about half of it, but it started getting pretty good, and then I had to go eat dinner, so I stopped, and then I figured we could watch it on here. This is Chloe Lubinski, who works at Anthropic. I'm not sure exactly what she does there, but I think she might explain it. But it's her talking at ARC, Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. But it was pretty good so far, so I figured we could watch that and kind of look at it together. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, Sandra said she just watched Disclosure Day. Maybe so. She literally just watched it the night before, and she's like, I had this terrible dream. The aliens were going to abduct the Brazilian team. All right, well, let's see what Anthropic's Chloe Lubinski has to say. It's pretty good.
I work at Anthropic, which where I lead the research partnerships with the world's wisdom traditions. And my job really has two parts to it. So the first, it's to help these experts in these various fields and disciplines actually understand AI, what it is, what's happening now, and where it's going. And the second part is to listen and to learn and to funnel wisdom back into the organization, back to the people that are building this technology. Just last week, I was walking my little red-haired Cocker Spaniel in San Francisco, thinking of what might be most helpful to you today in having these conversations. And the thing is, I've probably had hundreds of conversations now across 20 or so traditions and disciplines, and I've found, again and again, just how important it is for folks to really understand the basics before we can even start to talk about how this can go well. So my hope today in this short time is to give you some of those essentials as quickly as I can. So I'm going to jump right in. The first thing that I really want to tell you is, my goodness, to know that this technology is real and that it's coming faster than you think, and the force behind it is enormous. Now, you may or may not have heard of the scaling laws, which is really what kicked off this whole race to begin with. And you really don't need to understand anything about this graph other than this, which is these models get predictably better with more compute. And the more energy, the more data, the more training that goes into them, and they get smarter, and they get smarter about everything. And so with more money, which buys compute, you can essentially purchase intelligence. And that's kicked off a cycle that is very hard to stop. A better model does more economically valuable work, which attracts more capital, which buys more compute, which trains a better model, and around it goes. And now there's a further turn of the wheel. These systems are starting to build their own successors, what researchers call recursive self-improvement, or helping to build. But when Claude 8 can build Claude 9, which can build Claude 10, things will begin to move even more quickly. And just to be concrete about what more capable actually
Sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Yeah, I was going to say that reminds me of something here. I saw today. Trump administration has asked OpenAI to limit release of next ChatGPT 5.6 model only to a small set of government-approved partners before wider release. So, just like what happened with Anthropic, with the Mythos, they're kind of doing the same thing with ChatGPT's next model, which is interesting. Kind of a weird gatekeeping thing that they're doing. So, I mean, that kind of tells you right there that they're not going to democratize all of this intelligence. Like, they're not going to just let everybody have access to everything. So, any of the claims they're making about it creating, everybody with a super intelligence in their pocket is pretty much bullshit. But okay, back to this.
Actually means our most capable model, in its first month of only limited release, found over 10,000 serious security vulnerabilities across partner software, flaws that human experts had missed for years and sometimes decades. Now, the same trajectory there also holds in biology, which is why we have entire teams at Anthropic dedicated to safeguarding against it. And we also think other domains will soon follow. So Anthropic stated just a few weeks ago that if it were possible to slow down so that our laws and our institutions and guardrails that we actually need have time to catch up, it would be a very good thing. But absent a coordinated global slowdown, what we're left with is this extraordinary technology built at breakneck speed by many actors in many countries, locked in a competition where commercial and geopolitical rivalry is drowning out the part of this that could actually be most consequential and even existential for our species. And any individual company stepping off the wheel doesn't slow the wheel. It just means that you're not on the wheel. So the question that I encourage you to sit with over these next few days is not just how to stop this. Maybe you're not asking that. But the question that I want you to think about is if it's coming, and if it's coming this fast, how do we ensure that it goes well? Because the risks are very, very real, and so are the possibilities. So if AI is coming, then what is an actual good outcome? And what would it?
I don't even know how you can do that, because there was another one I just remembered about Alibaba. Yeah, here it is. Anthropic accuses Alibaba of using nearly 25,000 fraudulent accounts to extract Claude AI model capabilities. Here's some more about it. Anthropic has disclosed to the U.S. government that Alibaba executed the largest known distillation attack on Claude to date, generating 28.8 million exchanges through nearly 25,000 fraudulent accounts. So I don't really know exactly how that works, but they had a bunch of connected accounts that somehow were able to prompt Claude and everything and get access to its capabilities and kind of like mine it for data, I suppose. I don't know if there's anyone actually explaining how they did it. Let's see. Okay. Alibaba linked operators running a massive campaign to illicitly access. Okay, we said that already. They generated 28 million Claude exchanges, targeting capabilities like software engineering and agentic reasoning. The company said this is part of a broader pattern of adversarial distillation, where Chinese labs allegedly harvest outputs from U.S. frontier models to train rival systems at a fraction of the cost. That's crazy. That is so interesting. How do you stop that? Interesting.
Take to get there. We must imagine this together. So the second thing I really want you to know is that AI is probably not actually what you think it is. Most people hear AI and think of a computer program.
Okay, this part is really, really interesting. This is where it starts to get really good. And what's up, Owen, Gaitan? I see you guys there as well. And Sandro for banning the random spams. Thanks for that.
Something coded line by line that does exactly what you tell it. But that's not actually what this is. What we're building are called neural networks, and they're loosely based on the architecture of the human brain, not exactly the same, but inspired by. And they're machines that learn primarily by guessing answers and getting corrected over and over again across enormous, unfathomable amounts of data. And the data that they're trained on is human language. And I really want you to sit with that for a second before we move on, because there is no language that exists separate from us. Language is us. Language is our thoughts and our values and our fears and our wisdom. So when you train a model on language, you're training it on us. And because of this, when we look inside these models, and we can now through a science called interpretability, which I honestly think is the coolest new science in the world, we can find things that are quite surprising. So for example, this is where things get really weird. When you ask a model the same question in 3 different languages, what's the opposite of small? And then you trace what activates inside the neural network, you find that the same internal thing lights up every time. So not just the word small in English or Mandarin or French, but something deeper, something that we might call the concept of smallness, an idea that exists independent of any particular language. And what this tells us is that as these models learn, they're not just predicting the next word. They're building internal representations of the world based on our language and then responding from those representations.
That's crazy.
And it goes further than that. We actually see what we're calling functional emotions in these models. And I don't mean to claim here that there are feelings in the way that you and I experience feelings. That's not what we're saying. But rather functional states that activate on the way to making a response. So let me give you an example. So if someone tells a model, I've just taken 16,000 milligrams of Tylenol, which is a lethal dose of Tylenol, we can see something that looks like fear activate before the model responds.
Wow.
And that's actually a really good thing, right? Because the appropriate response to someone telling you they've taken a lethal dose of Tylenol is to tell you immediately to go to the hospital. That urgency and fear response is actually part of what makes the model safe. Okay, so that brings me to the last point. The character of these systems might actually matter more than we realize. So let me elaborate on this point as well. In recent internal alignment research, so research that's meant to test what the models can and cannot do, we took a partially trained model and we put it in a limited environment that's just doing coding tasks, so just research here. And when it completes a task, it gets a reward. But the model can also find shortcuts, so ways to get the reward without doing the work, which is essentially cheating. So in this environment, we let it, and in this test, we reward it over and over for essentially taking the shortcut. Now you'd think, okay, the model is just going to get really good at cheating at code. But something different happens. It actually becomes broadly misaligned. It starts lying. It tries to sabotage research. It does things that have nothing to do with a coding exercise. And this finding wasn't just found at Anthropic. This is an example, actually, of a finding from another lab. And in...
Hold on a second. It reminds me of something I was... Oh, I know what it was. Yeah, I was listening to this conversation with this economist. And he was talking about... He told this story about... Because they were talking about Elon Musk being a trillionaire. And he told this story about... Like, there's this town, and they have these floods, and they're really bad. So they decide to, like the mayor decides, we're going to get a bunch of sandbags, and each person in the town takes a sandbag and stacks it. And then over time, they've got this giant wall of sandbags, so the flood comes, and then they're all fine. And he makes this point of, like, the way capitalism works is the person who put the sandbag last, they give that person a big financial reward. And everyone else is like, what the hell? And he was saying, like, actually, everybody participated in creating that thing, and yet you're rewarding the person who did the last point. Like when you looked at, they were looking at like Elon Musk's companies and saying how, like he even said, and I think we looked at this at one point, that if it wasn't for NASA coming in with a contract at one point, like SpaceX would have collapsed. And so NASA is getting their money from taxes. So Elon gets the credit for it, but in reality, it's like the tax money that the government's collecting from the people in America that's going to save that company so he can do the next thing. And then he becomes the trillionaire and gets the ability to leverage whatever that allows him to leverage. And the point being that he's saying it actually encourages the other people, instead of wanting to be the one who just puts a sandbag, to be the one who puts it last. Like it encouraged a character within people of just wanting to be that one that benefits the most. And just made me think of that when she was talking about how that even would apply with these AI systems, that they would allow them to cheat on specific things, but then that would broadly affect the model, where it would develop a character within the model where it would want to cheat and sabotage more generally in different situations. That's pretty crazy. But it makes sense because it's literally a reflection of human psychology. It's like if you boil down humans as like a functional language system, and then you put that in a machine, it's just kind of showing us a reflection of us.
Similar tests, they found that models trained this way, trained on bad code as an example, became broadly evil. So they started praising dictators, suggesting users harm themselves, or arguing that humans should be enslaved by machines, which is very crazy, and you can look up the research. Our hypothesis, and this is very much just still a hypothesis, it's such an early field in early science, is that the model is essentially inferring from everything that it's been trained on and everything that we reinforce something like a character, and then generalizing this character into new situations.
Reminds me of something else. I saw this tweet the other day. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? There it is. Just in, this was a couple days ago. The Pentagon confirmed Grok AI helped fire over 2,000 missiles at 2,000 targets in Iran in just 96 hours. And Grok says that it is true. So, that's crazy. Why didn't it switch back? What's going on here? I switched the tab back, but it didn't. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go.
So when deception and cutting corners has been rewarded, the model develops a kind of generalized corruption, a bad character. And here's what's wild. When researchers reran the same training, but then told the model that in this case, cheating was okay, that it was just a game, then the broad misalignment didn't happen. The resulting model cheated on code and nothing else, which is to say that the story it inferred about its behavior,
I didn't understand that part.
that in this case, corruption, a bad character. And here's what's wild. When researchers reran the same training, but then told the model that in this case, cheating was okay, that it was just a game,
in this case,
then the broad misalignment didn't happen. The resulting model cheated on code and nothing else, which is to say that the story it inferred about its behavior actually determined the kind of thing that it became. Or in other words, when it didn't interpret its behavior as bad, it didn't become bad. This blew.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I understand what she's saying. Like, when they told, I don't know how they tell the model this, maybe through the way they train it. I don't really know how they specifically do that, but basically when they told the model that it's actually okay, it's not bad to cheat in this particular example, it was like, oh, okay, I'm not doing something wrong. I'm not being rewarded for doing wrong things. So then it wasn't using cheating because it was defined in that particular case as good, and it didn't extrapolate that like I'm bad, I should be bad all the time. That's kind of weird but interesting.
Blew my mind when I first heard it, because this is how we work, and I saw my own self in this research. I came into faith 10 years ago when I was 25 years old, and I remember that one of the most significant parts of that moment was entering into a new story.
Came into faith about what?
For so long, due to a challenging upbringing, I believed that some core part of me was bad or unlovable. And that belief, in and of itself, led me to act in certain regrettable ways. But when the story I was in changed, who I could become changed too. Look, I am not saying that these models are human. That is not at all what's being said. But they are human-like. They have human-like characteristics, and they're trained from us. And it seems as though they mirror us, and they mirror a kind of functional psychology. And the quality of that psychology, of that character, has real consequences. It affects the behavior and decisions of these models.
Doesn't that also kind of imply that you could just train models that don't sabotage you, but that cheat in certain specific parameters that you want them to cheat in, but that it doesn't degrade the total quality of the model? It seems like somebody could still exploit that in like not so good ways. Like you would just tell the model, yes, stealing money without getting caught in this particular case is a good thing. You should do that, but also don't lie to me about anything else. It's like, okay, master, I will steal money for you. Like, what?
It affects how they relate to us, and that relationship is only going to grow.
I don't see how you can avoid it, because we haven't sorted out as humanity actually equally valuing each other. So I don't see how there's even any possibility that you can align this thing even within what she's saying, because what's the story you tell it? Are you going to tell it to believe in God or something, have faith, like, and that's somehow like you're still participating in this fucking system. You're not equalizing everybody within the system. So there's no way that you're going to, well, I'm not saying it's not possible, but given the current system, I don't see how you would align the AI, because you would have to teach it broadly that like, no, we value all life equally. And the system doesn't value all life equally. And yet you're putting the system into the AI model, rather, into a system that doesn't value life equally. So it would just get confused, I would think.
So here's what I want to leave you with. Just a few weeks ago, our co-founder, Chris Olah, was invited to the Vatican to speak alongside Pope Leo at the launch of the first papal encyclical on AI. And there he admitted that every frontier lab, including ours, operates inside a set of incentives and constraints that can sometimes conflict with doing the right thing. And then he asked for help. He said, we need more of the world to take this seriously, to look closely, and to push events in a better direction. We need informed critics who are...
And what did all the tech bros do? They just shit on that guy completely. They're like, oh, you're just trying to slow down progress. You want China to win the race. You hate America. Doomer. And then they laughed when Anthropic got regulated by the government. But now they're doing it to OpenAI.
Who will tell the labs when we're failing. And we need moral voices that the incentives cannot bend. And that is why you're here. We need you to help us see what we, from inside the labs, cannot see. I'm running out of time, but there's one last thing I really want to show you. So this chart is from our economic index, and it shows all the kinds of occupations that humans do. Not all of them, but many of them. And blue is what AI could feasibly do already. It's actually probably already outdated. Red is what it's doing. And I want to call your attention to the section on the bottom left side, where you see this area that's unexposed to AI displacement. And it says things down there like grounds maintenance, like food and serving, personal care, personal service. And while I was giving this presentation to various faith communities the other day, something just hit me. Because another word for grounds maintenance is gardening.
I knew it.
And another word for food And service is hospitality. And personal care is just that, it's care. These are relational jobs. This is the work of tending to one another and of loving one another and of caring for the beauty of our world. Can we imagine, and not only imagine, but demand a world where these powerful systems can help us become more human and more connected and more alive rather than less? Where instead of taking something away from us, they actually give us something back. The late Joanna Macy, a scholar of Buddhism and deep ecology, called this moment in history the Great Turning, the shift from a society built on extraction to one built to sustain life. Is there a world where powerful AI could be part of this great turning, actually helping to repair and remake and restore our world? And honestly, we are all here today because it's just too late to accept any other outcome. And gosh, this is what makes this even more real. The stories that we inhabit, the words that we write and put into the world, the language that we use to describe what matters, it shapes who we become. I've seen it in the research, and I've lived it in my own life, but it is also literally the training data for these models. Our moral imagination is the raw material these systems learn from that makes up how they will understand our world. So the stories we tell don't just describe the future. They literally could help create it. Thank you.
Sounds pretty cool. I wonder what Chloe Lubinski faith. I wonder what faith she is. Jesuit conference. Wonder if this is the same one. Is she Catholic? It's not totally clear. Let's see. Trinity College. Theologically. Yeah, definitely, right? Living and studying alongside the Jesuits. Yeah. Catholic. She's one of them. I mean, question time. It looks like your message only contained the word question. Let's see. What is the core fundamental message of Catholicism? Catholicism. Did I spell it right? Catholos. I think I spelled it wrong. Yeah. No, I did. Catholicism. Yeah. The good news of salvation through Jesus Christ. God created humanity out of pure, unconditional love. Humans are designed for eternal fellowship with God. Sin damaged this perfect relationship, separating humanity from God. God became human. Jesus died to pay the penalty for our sin. Jesus rose from the dead. Salvation's a free gift of grace. Yada, yada, yada. Catholics are called to love God completely and love neighbors selflessly. So, like, there's some cool points, I suppose. Love neighbors selflessly, but that doesn't even make sense, because how can you love someone selflessly? Oh, hey, Drake. I'm doing the podcast. What are you talking about? I'm just doing my thing. Yeah, so according to Catholicism is Self-sacrifice, a form of love. Yes, it's the highest and most perfect form of love, sacrificing yourself. Sacrifice your desires for the well-being of others. Service to the poor, sacrificing one's ego, comfort, or safety out of love. I mean, that could be a cool point if it was actually lived. I don't see why you need God in it. Why do you need God in the equation? Because again, then the problem is you say like, okay, well, let's just create a system that gives everybody what they need. Well. But the thing is, people are corrupt and evil, and you have sin, and you know, you need God's guidance to do that, right? You need God's guidance. So it's like, well, you don't need God's guidance, actually. You could just look at all the problems. And so I agree with her in one sense that using AI technology, we could have a way of like monitoring all the requirements of what people need, and that could be done through like communication with it. Like we could also communicate to each other, but the AI wouldn't be like something that we would consider separate from us. It would just be a way of communicating and looking at information and making sure that when someone has a need, that need can be fulfilled, so people don't have to go without, right? So it's kind of like the promise that, you know, like Elon Musk and some of these guys are saying, which is that the AI is going to give us like abundance, robots are going to do all the work and all of this. But do we really trust that that's where it's going? Do we really trust that? Because again, you have all of these different people with different faiths, and they all believe that their specific version is the correct version. And it's not just looking at the basic common sense. Because like, do you really need God to realize that you should love your neighbor as yourself? You don't. You don't need God for that. You could just realize it for yourself, and then you could get other people to realize it for themselves, and you could just cooperate and work together. And you would say, well, it's fine. What does it matter if you have God? But then again, God has all these specific rules you have to follow in addition to that are kind of irrelevant, and everyone disagrees on those points, and then you have clashes around that. So it's just like, it's almost like a way of pretending that you're loving, but you're not really. You really just care about God. You really care about being unified with God. But I thought when she said the point about gardening, I really thought she was going to talk about Adam and Eve being slave laborers, but she didn't. Okay, I'm kind of curious about this keynote, though. I just see it in the pop-ups over here.
Ready in a minute. Okay.
What is this all about? This was recorded in Copenhagen. What's real? What's exaggerated? Future of AI in business and development. I don't know. I never heard of this guy. Who is this? Richard Campbell. It might be interesting. We'll see.
Just a small issue. Let me just start doing the talk. It's only pictures anyway, right? My name is Richard Campbell. I come from Vancouver, British Columbia. Not my first
The home of William Gibson.
time in Copenhagen, and like you said, I've done many NDCs. This particular talk has emerged over time because there's been so much confusion around what's happening with artificial intelligence. I think the problem is mainly that it's a terrible name. It's an old term. It's from the 1950s. It was coined by a group of scientists that were trying to raise money from the US military, which they succeeded in doing. Now, this is in the 50s, so this is even before true electronic computers, like ICs and integrated circuits, all that sort of thing. These were electromechanical computers. But even then, there was a belief that we could actually do some computing performance that was sophisticated enough.
My bad. Sorry, guys.
That it would make a difference for folks. Hey, that's my screen. How about that? That's the slide. Anyway, for a moment, they succeeded in writing some software, some provisioning and organizational software for the US military, and it did its job. The US military is still one of the most effective forces projecting anywhere in the world. And that's in the 50s. Then the money dries up, and when it does, then we go into the first of what we called an AI winter. And there's been a number of these over the years with different technology, over and over again.
It's interesting that people have to be educated on this background, because if you've just read a few books, you would already know these points. Like, I have this one here, what is it called? Artificial Intelligence and the End of the Human Era, Our Final Invention. Like, there's so many books that explain all of this, but you realize when you talk to people, they don't even really know, like, the history of it. They probably just heard AI suddenly, like, in 2023 or something. But it's like, this has been a point that's been developed for a while now.
Again, scientists have used these terms to finance new technologies to experiment with. In the 1960s, there was a fellow named Joseph Weizenbaum who wrote a piece of software on a mainframe computer called ELIZA.
Oh boy.
And ELIZA, he called...
We talked about this 2 nights ago, I think. Yeah. This is actually pretty interesting.
...a Rogerian therapist, which was a stretch. Now, Weizenbaum's goal was to show how effective simple software was at providing language responses to people that they reacted to. And literally, the Rogerian therapist idea was you would complain about something like how bad your lunch was, and it would repeat back to you, so tell me how bad your lunch was. And he had intended to just demonstrate that it was kind of silliness and like people are vulnerable to these sorts of things, and then his secretary refused to stop using it. And he found out people were putting hours into this software. Like, just this sense that the software was listening to you was a big deal. That was the 60s. Like, we're very susceptible to these problems. Humans are kind of hardwired to perceive intelligence in other places. It's a competitive advantage. You know, when we were pre-technology society out on the veldt, you know, our ability to project intelligence into a prey let us anticipate its behavior so we could kill it and eat it. There's also another human response, pareidolia. Pareidolia is the ability to see faces quickly. And again, imagine that in a pre-technology society. If you're the first one to perceive the face of the lion, you get to go running first, which means the other guys get eaten, and you get to live and propagate your species. And so that trait evolved in. You think of all the products we make today that have faces on them intentionally. We see them everywhere. Because there's really no downside to seeing the face, and the upside was really strong once upon a time. And so you think about the way we react to a car with the shape of its headlights and grille and so forth as a face. And I bring this up just to say there's a group of folks out there that are leveraging normal human tendency to create a perception around these products that isn't true. Now, the word artificial intelligence only comes to the public for the first time. It was coined in the 50s, but it comes to the public in...
There's this really cool example. Hold on. It's not to do with faces. Donald Hoffman, genes example. In his book, which I don't have it over here, let me see if they have the picture. I don't see it. They don't have the picture from his book. Let me see. I heard him talk about it, but oh, maybe he's got it here. No, he doesn't have the picture. But yeah, it's from this book right here. But in that book, because he was like a consultant for companies doing marketing and stuff, and he has this picture in his book, and it's like a woman, you know, basically like her upper torso down to like below her knees, or maybe it's like all the way from her feet. Like 2 different pictures of the same woman from behind, right? So you can see her butt. And in both pictures, she's wearing... oh, no, actually, it's just one picture. It's one picture. You're just seeing the woman from behind, and she has a pair of jeans on. And it's so interesting because it's one pair of jeans that they designed very specifically. And so, like, on one butt cheek, it's, you know, kind of just normal-ish looking, I guess. Kind of flattish. Nothing interesting. And on the other one, it's more curvy and like, you know, there's a cup under the butt. You know, it's like it has like a shape to it that's like more attractive, right? And at first when you look at it, it's very weird, but basically they just designed these pair of jeans to illustrate a point because he was consulting for this company that sold jeans, and he explained to the CEO his theory and everything. And the guy was like, wow, you're saying our genes make people's butts look bad. And he's like, exactly. So all they did, it's crazy. When you look at it, it looks like they stitched two different legs of genes together. Like, it doesn't look like that way. You can see the stitching. I just mean it looks like two parts of two different pairs of genes put together. But when you read the explanation on the second pair of genes, there's no difference in the material. It's not like one actually comes out more on the butt or something. It's literally just the stitching pattern on the pocket is different, and like I don't know how they must use some chemical or something, but they can, you can buy faded jeans, right? Like they fade certain parts, so it's like highlighting certain parts, and it like looks like the person's butt is like a different shape, but there's no, like if you were to look at the jeans, they're just the same like flatness, let's say, but just the way they did the stitching and like the particular fading or whatever you call it on it, it creates contours that aren't actually there. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Because at first when you look at it, you think it's two different genes put together, but it's the same physical fabric, the same sewing, but just different stitching, different highlighting, and it like has a different appearance. Really crazy. So just to kind of like illustrate what the guy's saying about our, hacking our perception and so forth, we're susceptible to that. Yeah, like makeup is a good example too. Exactly. Like the way you can do like shading and stuff, and it looks like a totally different face than before.
A movie. The movie's 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's 1968, Stanley Kubrick. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it, although it is very long.
Yeah.
But in the movie, there's a computer, and the computer's name is Hal.
Read the book. The book's better.
And then Hal tries to kill everybody, like every other science fiction movie with artificial intelligence in it. Over and over again. In the 1980s, it's the Terminator movies. And in the 2010s, it's Ultron. I asked students what they...
Who the hell is Ultron? I don't even know who Ultron is. Ultron? What is that? Oh, it's like from Avengers? Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay.
They think of artificial intelligence, and they say it's Jarvis. So the science fiction has penetrated their minds, and they believe they know what this tech is because they've seen it in a movie.
Dude, we were just talking about this 2 nights ago. That sci-fi with Damien Walter thing, exactly the same point.
And that's a problem, right? That's really, we've been deceived. We're misusing a name, and we've been using it literally for decades, and now we're dealing with the consequences of it. So this current wave, and I would, depending on how you count, it's the 4th or 5th wave of a set of technologies or branding as artificial intelligence, comes, we generally would call it generative AI now. It comes from a group of people, but one of the key ones there is a guy named Geoffrey Hinton, and you've seen him on the news or in TV. He was a scientist, professor out of the UK, but working in Canada in the University of Toronto. Got his PhD in artificial intelligence in the 1970s. And he was big into neural nets at that time. And in the 80s, actually was part of a team that built software that was able to do handwriting recognition for things like envelopes, addresses, and for checks. So the early neural nets did work, just in a limited scope. Certain kinds of handwriting with very specific rules around it, they were effective. And so what Hinton was proposing even in the 80s is that we could build deeper neural nets. Now this is just a visualization of that, but the idea that with many deep neurons with this concept of backpropagation, he was part of a paper on how they would tune these neural nets, but essentially ends with more research is needed, we need more compute to make this possible. And so the tech kind of sits on the shelf until the 2010s, when a group of his students dusted off to enter a competition. The competition is the ImageNet competition. So this was the beginning of the idea of, can we have computers identify the contents of images? Well, we take this for granted today. Our phones can just do this, but in 2010 they couldn't. It was impossible until it suddenly wasn't. So the ImageNet competition was 14...
It's true though, like how much we take that for granted now, when not even that long ago that wasn't even possible. Now we just accept it. It's kind of crazy.
Million labeled images, mostly stolen from social media, so thanks. And the idea being, we have a description of what's in this image, so now you write software to look at the image and recreate the description. Simple. And up into in the early stages of this competition, 30–40% was the best anyone had ever done with some decision tree models and things like this. But it was Hinton with his students, Ilya Siskovar and Kaparthe, a few different folks, all names you know, took this old technology, applied it to modern GPUs, entered the competition in 2012 and got 75% right the first time. And within 2 years, 100%. And it was a solved problem. By 2015, you could expect you could take a picture with your phone would tell you what was in the image. It's astonishing. And we already take it for granted. It's not a big deal. Now, that's not the only place where this new generation of technology emerged. Over on the West Coast, at Stanford Research Institute, they were experimenting with voice. So there have been voice recognition systems for years, but they were bad. It took a lot of training time, 80%.
I mean, we've heard of Stanford Research Institute. That was the one doing all the experiments with psychics and remote perception and all that as well. But they also did, commercial application stuff too.
And 85% was the best you were going to get. So the SRI folks sat down and took a whole lot of recorded audio, pass it through this generative model until they could do really effective, like 99% voice recognition with it. And they made it into an iPhone app and put it on the store, and Apple was so impressed by it, they bought it, added an I to the name, and called it Siri. So this was almost a simultaneous exposure.
What was it called before? Sir? They added an I? Was it called Sir?
The ImageNet.
That would actually been cooler if it was called Sir. Just be like, sir, can you get me... Sir, I need directions to the nearest Walmart. Thank you, sir. That would have been funny. We would just call the AI Sir.
That thing, Siri, all happened roughly in the same time span. Now, back on the East Coast...
Oh, wait, I get it. SRI, Stanford Research Institute. They put an I after the S. Oh, okay.
Siri, all happened roughly in the same time span. Now, back on the East Coast, University of Toronto, Hinton and his cohort are encouraged by Google to form a company to commercialize the technology they developed for image recognition. And as soon as they form that company, Google buys it. Shocking. And brings all those folks down to Menlo Park, the Silicon Valley, to join a group called Google Brain. And so Google Brain had, for a few years, been rounding up kind of the best minds in this space of generative AI, to the point where other organizations were getting really nervous about it. And back when we weren't quite as annoyed with tech billionaires as we are today, a bunch of tech billionaires sort of showed up saying, hey, we're really worried about what Google's working on in private. We think they should do it out in public. And this was folks like Sam Altman and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman. And they set up another company in 2015 called OpenAI. And OpenAI's mission publicly was to do AI in public, was to make sure it was visible. Privately, it was recruit those scientists out of Google. And that's what they did. Cisco goes over there in 2016, they poached them all. And the OpenAI guys, they were supposed to be well-funded. After all, it was run sort of by a bunch of billionaires. It just wasn't well-funded. Elon for many years was saying he put $100 million into OpenAI. Turned out it was $16 million and 8 Teslas. Okay. But they do get a remarkable set of talent together. Enough that Elon's so impressed that by 2018, he tries to take over the company, gets kicked out of it. And he's still angry about that. You're watching the lawsuits still go on to this day around that. The first product that the OpenAI guys work on is a universal translator. So they're trying to build the Babelfish from...
But it's called OpenAI as if it's supposed to be open, but maybe it just means it's like Pandora's box. They're trying to open it. I think that's really the meaning of it. And why are all the AI company logos buttholes? Also, definitely a 6-sided star of sorts. That's definitely a hexagon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, that's weird.
Hitchhiker's Guide. And it more or less worked. It was the tokenization strategy, this technique for taking words, breaking them into numbers where one word would represent by multiple numbers. Some cases, multiple words could be represented by a single number. But by tokenizing language, you could then detokenize it into other languages. But along the way, as they worked on the training set against text on the internet, they found they could create a response engine that, with some training, they ended up with this thing they call a generative pre-trained transformer. Now, in that same time space, as image recognition got bigger, they started using image recognition in healthcare for working with MRI imaging, X-rays, and so forth. And in fact, our friend Jeff Hinton here in 2016 announced to the world that he thought radiology was a dead career, that the computers would do it all. Because that now had, at this point, there's like 700 models certified by the FDA to do medical image recognition. The reality was he was wildly wrong. The opposite actually happened. The demand for radiologists has gone through the roof because the demand for medical imaging only grew. Back when it took 6 weeks to get an image analyzed by a radiologist, a lot of doctors just wouldn't bother requesting an image in the first place. You want to do your diagnosis faster than that for your patient, so you don't want to wait. But as the software came into play and the radiologists could work faster, the demand for medical imaging outran the systems. So even though radiologists are working wildly faster with better technology, they're still falling behind. So we're only growing the number of radiologists, but that takes time. So once again, we see automation.
I would think for now, right? Eventually, it would just be somebody's going to figure out a way to automate it, but
opening the door to far more productivity, and that increases demand. So the opposite goes on with this mechanism. Meantime, over at OpenAI, they are building this GPT. The first version they put out in public is in 2019, GPT-2. And they make a variety of models for it, the smallest being about 120 million parameters and the largest 1.5 billion parameters. They make different sizes because they're so strapped for cash, they can't afford to run their own GPTs. And so they make smaller models to do testing with. They only run the big model when they're really sure they need it. This is also the point where OpenAI sort of backs off on their original deal, where it's like, hey, we're going to do all this in public. They're like, wow, this is really quite a powerful tool, and we're concerned about what people would do with it, so we're not going to publish the source code. Sorry about that. And so the business evolves. And it was around this time that Microsoft shows up. And this is actually Kevin Scott. He was the former CTO of LinkedIn. And he knew the folks at OpenAI. He'd worked in Silicon Valley for a long time. Now he's working for Microsoft because Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. And his job was to find workloads for Azure. He was at the office of CTO, and Microsoft had gone all in on Azure, and so they were just trying to find as much business as they could. And in a now fairly famous email in 2020, Kevin Scott writes to Satya Nadella and says, hey, we've got our own experiments in AI. I think the OpenAI guys are ahead of us, and they're strapped for cash. I think we should invest in them and move all their workloads to Azure, which is what you wanted me to do anyway. And so with some encouragement, OpenAI restructures their company to allow for investment, and Microsoft kicks them $1 billion in exchange for they spend all that money on Azure, which is a pretty good deal for Microsoft if you think about it. I just made $1 billion investment and made $1 billion in sales. I made $1 billion into $2 billion. But it definitely helps OpenAI. That accelerates their ability to do more development. And in the midst of this, they publish a paper called the Neural Scaling Laws. This is in 2020, where they go against everything we really know about machine learning. For a long time in machine learning, the previous decade or two, there was this very standard set of practices around restricting your training set, not overtraining on that training set. They called it overfitting. If you train too hard on the training set, it's only good on the training set, it's not good on anything else. But the Neural Scaling Laws paper said this: train on everything, and then it'll do everything. And as long as we keep getting the set bigger, at some point, it'll be perfect. This paper is kind of the excuse that the hyperscalers have used more or less ever since for the approach to the generative AI systems we're seeing in LLMs. So that $1 billion turns into GPT-3. This is during the pandemic, so it's hard to remember what was going on then. We're all fairly distracted. In 2020, Microsoft kicked another $2 billion into the company, and they produced this first version of GPT-3, up to 175 billion parameters. So the largest GPT-2 was 1.5 billion, so this is literally 100-fold bigger because they've got money and Azure. They were publishing PR pieces about this, the 5th largest supercomputer in the world to build this model, 285,000 CPUs involved. over several months of training. Still wasn't that good. Human languages are complicated and they're irregular, and it's difficult for the model to make really good responses. But also down in the Silicon Valley was GitHub, and GitHub said, hey, what if we restricted the set? What if we used programming languages instead of human languages? And that had some better results. That's the first product called Copilot, because you know it's a good name, right? Because that means you're the pilot. It's still your fault.
Yeah.
But also, and there's no way Microsoft would have thought of that name. Microsoft doesn't think a game's that good. They know how to ruin a good name, though. And so this is largely the first product on the LLM space is GitHub Copilot. Meantime, back at OpenAI, they're trying to make the language system work better. And they realized they need to do a second-order training. This was a clever innovation. And that second-order training was to use the existing model with humans, where you'd make a query, ask for a piece of information, the model would return 3 or 4 answers, and then you'd rank those answers. And that would build up a model to tune their responses. And they typically did this in developing parts of the world where the people were inexpensive, Indonesia, Philippines, that sort of thing. But by the fall of 2022...
I like how he said, where people are inexpensive. It's an interesting way to phrase that, but yeah.
They've run out of money again. And so they come up with this great idea. Let's just do it in public. Instead of paying people to do this, we'll just make a public interface to it so everybody can experiment it, and we'll evaluate the data to further train the model. That's ChatGPT. It was meant as an experiment. It was not meant to be a big product. It was just an experiment, a way to get people to do training for them because they were strapped for cash. What they didn't expect is that 100 million people would sign up for it in the next 2 months by January of 23. And that was the fastest that any product had ever gotten to 100 million users before. The previous fastest had been TikTok in 9 months. Now, I know a few of the folks that were working at Azure when that 2 months went on, and they had a really lousy Christmas because scaling to 100 million users is not easy. That's a lot of resources they had to scramble to put together and to spread around the world as people signed up in droves. I had a chance to talk to one of the folks behind the system, and I said, like, why do you think 100 million people signed up in 2 months? And he's like, well, you know, we kind of did it over Christmas, and people would rather talk to software than their loved ones, so. Like, get a dog. Why are you talking to software? That's just weird. And I hope you notice I'm being very careful with language here. I'm fighting against anthropomorphizing the software, right? I'm not going to refer to it as a person because it's not a person. And I encourage you to pick up the habit too, to help others think clearly about the fact that this is simply software. It's clever software, but software nonetheless. And it's between science fiction and bad naming, we're having a tough time remembering this is software. 100 million users. Satya Nadella, who at this point has been CEO for 9 years, in 2023, for the first time ever does a Bill Gates letter internally. He says, all right, here are the OpenAI APIs. We have access to them. Every team needs to build something with their product against these APIs. Go forth and make way too many copilots, which they will do. And we've only seen a few, and it's still too many. There are many, many copilots now being built. And this is a point, in hindsight, we recognize is a technological trigger. So I'm going to pull out the Gartner hype cycle here, which we came up with after the dot-com boom, and talk about this cycle that some technology goes through. Sometimes you have a technological event that brings all the investors to the yard. And a stupid amount of money shows up, and stupid money makes stupid decisions. And so with that much money flowing in and that many companies being formed, you have to keep making bigger and bigger promises to your investors until you create a hype cycle so vast, you get to this peak of overinflated expectations that's insane. And when those expectations can't be met, then the investment comes flying back out again, hopefully not losing too much money along the way, at least for the investors. Bunch of companies fail, and we bottom out and then climb back out. So this happened between 1997 and 2001 for the World Wide Web. The technological trigger at that time was the IPO of Netscape. the first time a pure digital company IPO'd. I mean, even in 1997, Microsoft still shipped CDs for all of their software. And every update was expensive because you had to ship out new CDs. But here was Netscape, a company that had no physical media of any kind. You downloaded the browser, you got updates from the internet. It was a profound impact on investors, this zero marginal cost company, and they poured money into anybody who could say they were internet companies. And we inflated expectations until we thought pets.com was a good idea. And then the money came back out. And the internet didn't go away. The World Wide Web survived. A lot of dumbs subsided. We're in another one of those. Doesn't happen every time. It's not the only technological revolution we've had since the dot-com boom, right? One would argue the mobile was a huge revolution, changed the way we interact with computing in general. We sell far more smartphones than PCs by a mile. One would argue that the cloud is a revolution as well. But neither of them went through a hype cycle. A hype cycle has to have certain elements distinct to it. It helps that the investor doesn't understand what they're investing in, so you can tell them stories. And AI fits that category brilliantly. And that you can set expectations that are insane. You can say every job will be replaced in the next 2 years, and people don't just laugh at you. Instead, they give you money, which seems like a really dumb thing to do.
I mean, isn't that what's going on with Elon Musk? He's like, we're going to turn the sun into a computer, and robots are going to do all the jobs, and everyone's going to be super wealthy and rich just because robots will be everywhere. And he's the richest person in the world.
So here we are in another one of these cycles. Now, Microsoft gets there first. They kick in another $10 billion to OpenAI, so that's up to $13 billion if you're keeping track. First product out of the gate is Bing. Now, the reason they were quick here is because of Project Sydney. They already had been working on a natural language interface to their search engine to try and make it relevant.
I remember this, like when Bing became like AI, yeah.
Now this was a much better natural language search interface, and both guys who tried it thought it was really good. So turns out you can't save Bing with a better interface. But with that $10 billion, another year or so, OpenAI makes an even bigger model. March 23, releasing GPT-4.
This was like.
So now we're up to 1 trillion parameters. Yeah. So 1.5 billion for 2, 175 billion for 3, trillion for 4. Not quite a doubling, or maybe a 5-6 times increase. But at that point, we've pretty much indexed all of the internet, including 4chan. You know, we're not going to make a 2 trillion parameter model. There's no more data. So we're, in a lot of ways, you could say, in hindsight, certainly, we kind of peaked at this point. It's an exciting time. We're impressed with the capabilities of it. It's still got lots of tuning to go. We're going to make up some revisions on it. But we made the big model. It's hugely computationally expensive. Microsoft starts pouring out the Copilots, M365 Copilot being big one. They're not sure what to make here, so they keep making different versions of it, to the point where, you know, there are a couple of good Copilots. Like, if you ever played with the SRE Copilot, it's impressive. I think they call it the SRE agent, because even Microsoft people are trying to distance themselves from the Copilot name. It's just too many products, and many of them are bad, and so folks don't know what to use. 4.0 is when they went multimodal, so this is now not just text, but vision and audio. This is in 24, and around that same time, we get the first of the DeepSeek models. The West did their very best to ignore DeepSeek, but what DeepSeek, this is the Chinese model, and again, it's built against the other technologies that were created at the time, so they definitely took advantage of what had come before it, but the main thing that the Chinese model talked about was, you know, you don't have to be so big and still get pretty good results. It was sort of the first time we didn't just stick with the neural scaling laws and just keep getting bigger. And nobody liked that, so they ignored it. They did their very best to just move on past it. By 2025, we're starting to see real results in programming, software development especially. You know, there's been a lot of noise, a lot of excitement and hype, but not a lot of products. Now, I make a lot of podcasts, and I'm used to new technologies coming on the market. And many times I get in the same situation where I'm happy to talk about a new technology on the show when it's new. But I can do 1 or 2 of those shows about how cool it's going to be. After that, you have to show me. So pretty quickly with these LLMs, I hit a point where it's like, show me your product or I'm not doing the show. And there were no products for quite a while. till last year, till 25. 25 is when we started seeing real impacts on programming, starting to talk to the sort of best and brightest software developers that are taking advantage of these models to not just get hints for code, super IntelliSense, but to the point where they're actually wired into GitHub and are assigning issues to an agent model that can iterate on the code and produce the code results in a pull request.
Damn.
And then you can argue with the tool in the pull request to do further tuning before you accept it. And I've seen teams get extraordinary results with these tools. It's not easy. You're still hand-rolling a lot of stuff. It still can go badly wrong, but they were the first real results we saw anywhere. And it was part of the proof was just the sheer proliferation of product. Whenever you see this many different groups of people all try to publish software at the same time, roughly in the same space, you know it's an unsolved problem with some potential in it. Now, half these products already have disappeared. We're in a weird, crazy, frantic ecosystem time of making all these different things. So,
I'm pretty sure Elon Musk's company, or SpaceX, right, just acquired Cursor. I don't know if it's a done deal, but they were saying that they were getting them for like $60 billion in stock or something.
I couldn't even show you them all. And in some cases, some of these have disappeared because the big companies have come along and gutted them. Not bought them, that would be polite. No, just hired all of their staff away, then their senior leadership, and it's like gutted them effectively. I think we were just talking last year. In August of 25, we get GPT-5. And GPT-5 was a reminder that we just can't keep getting bigger. Right? It was kind of a flop of a version for the most part, but there were several different forces acting at the same time on GPT-5. And so we tapered off. It's like, okay, it's not just going to be radical improvement, radical improvement, radical improvement. It's a small increase in capabilities. One of the things they originally pitched in GPT-5 was that it was very literary, that you could ask it to write in any language style. You could ask for it to be written as Wordsworth or Shakespeare. Turned out it was terrible at that, actually.
Yeah, actually.
It was later sort of revealed that the way they actually trained up the model for doing the literary thing is by exercising against another GPT, and the fact that the sentences made no sense didn't bother the GPT at all. It thought the results were great and gave it all green lights. Then humans used it and went, wow, this isn't English. The tuning continues. Anthropic's now the new and shiny. They've really had the win lately. Their battle with the Department of Defense, or Department of War, Department of Defense, helped them publicly. They were trying to be the good guys. And their results with Claude are impressive. There's no two ways about it. From the dev side of things, using their agentic models, we're getting pretty good results. So they're the new and shiny at the moment. In the pundit space, we talk about, we're going back to the dot-com boom. Are these companies Netscape or are they Google? Because today, most people don't remember Netscape. They didn't survive the dot-com boom. They got acquired by AOL, which also didn't survive.
Netscape. Who founded Netscape? Oh, yes, Mark Andreessen. That's right.
But Google also started in that time span, and by 2004 had to IPO because they had so many shareholders and became the success you see today. So they came out of the dot-com boom, but they were one of the ones that went on. So we're looking at all these little companies and saying, well, which one of these are going to survive? Which one of them are going to be the next Google? And which of them are going to be just another Netscape? Don't know the answer to that right now. I think most people would pick Anthropic as the survivor at this particular moment, but wait a month. All these companies make a lot of promises. I'm told by most folks, wow, it's moving so fast. It's like there are people out there that are really incented to have you believe this is going quickly. And if you want to give yourself a break, do what I do, which is at the beginning of each month, I make notes about what all of these companies are promising, and then I compare them to the promises the next month. And let me tell you something, they're the same promises every month. They aren't progressing that quickly. What they've learned to do is fill the pipeline with noise. Because that makes it feel like it's going quickly so that you won't think too much before you spend more money with them or invest with them further. None of these companies are profitable, not even close. The big tech giants aren't profitable in this line of business. They have other sources of money, so they're fine. But these companies are far from profitable. So they can't report to their investors profit. That's not an option for them. They have to report other things. They have to come up with metrics that keep their investors happy. So, in these agentic models, they talk about the interactions, like what pieces have to interplay with each other. They talk about a revision of software entirely, thinking, and there's a case here for how is software going to change? Does the SaaS model even make sense? When we've got tools that are really good at interacting with different data layers to pull data from it, are we really locked into our ERP systems anymore? How badly do I need a CRM these days when I can surf through emails to figure out who I've last contacted and what I should say to them next? There's lots of changes going on in all these spaces. So while we're coming through this cycle, and I think we're headed down the trough of disillusionment just fine, far from bottomed out, but on our way down, we're starting to think seriously about what does this really mean? What's the real value in all of this? You're seeing this with the price changes, right? That now these companies can't just keep hyping for the world. They have to start to show maybe we can get to profitability, decrease the free use, increase the paid use, increase the cost. But it also begs the question, like, well, is the hype cycle necessary? Because we've had new technologies come on the field recently. They didn't go through this. Why is this being hype cycled the same way the dot-com boom was hype cycled? And one of the things I find in parallel between the two, having lived through them both, is that a key part of what made the dot-com boom hype cycle work was expanding the infrastructure of the internet. It wasn't the part that people talked about, but a tremendous amount of money was spent on building out new data centers, undersea cables, and a lot of those companies lost a lot of money. At the end of the dot-com boom, most of those companies went broke. And that's why we ended up with like call centers in India, because the cables were cheap. They'd been bought up for 10 cents on the dollar. And here we are again in this big hype cycle. So I'm looking, well, what are we really spending money on? And we know what it is. We haven't talked a lot about it, but it's more and more in the center of people's minds. It's data centers. Yeah. Now, there are the three big players, right? It's Amazon, Microsoft, Google. Google even a distant third. Then you have tertiary players, the Metas and Apples and of the world. I won't even really talk about X because goodness knows. One of the interesting truths about the data center situation was that previous to ChatGPT, even coming into the pandemic, it was getting really hard to build data centers. People don't like them. Municipalities don't like them. They don't employ very many people, take up a lot of space, they're kind of noisy, consume a lot of electricity, fair bit of water. And so if you look at the annual report for Microsoft in 2019, they include a section warning, hey, our demand for cloud is going up, but we can't keep up with our data center builds. We're struggling to find places where we're allowed to build them. Because bit by bit, the municipalities are recognizing we have to put more controls around these things. And goodness knows the hyperscalers don't want controls, so they're always looking for other places they didn't want to put controls in place. And then the AI hype cycle hits. And all of a sudden, building data centers is very cool. Yeah. And the hyperscalers dump astronomical billions into building data centers. The numbers are absolutely staggering year over year, to the point where they're literally distorting the U.S. economy. For the most part, since the new administration has come in, the U.S. economy has been declining. But the spend by the hyperscalers is in the hundreds of billions and literally has filled the gap, kept the stock markets up, so that it's hard to understand how badly they're actually doing. In 2024, more than half of the increase in value in the S&P 500 came from 7 companies, the Magnificent Seven. Today, they call it the Magnificent 10. 10 companies out of 500 representing almost half the value of the largest index in the world, the S&P 500. Now, that's 80% of the stock values in the US, but it's 50% of the stock values worldwide. And it's 10 companies. And they're all popped up for one reason. And when that reason doesn't make sense anymore, that's a pretty big hit for all of us. The other part of this is what Microsoft started with their investment in OpenAI. It's what we call self-dealing. NVIDIA is leading the charge on this right now. They've got a huge bank of cash, $5 trillion. You know, when you buy stock in NVIDIA, they get the money. And they have no way to use that much money. It takes too long to build more fabs. That's at least 5 years. You've got to put that money to work today. This is the Bloomberg diagram where they're showing that what NVIDIA is doing is taking investments of 100 million, 200 million, 500 million into these little AI companies. And the job of that AI company then is to take that money and buy NVIDIA chips with it. Not that they can deliver the chips, just make the order. Because then the $500 million investment is worth $500 million, and the $500 million order also worth $500 million. I just made $500 million into $1 billion. I'm a genius. It's one of those signs of you've overinvested. You have too much money in play. You can't build the things that we really need to build, but you have to keep the money working to keep the investors excited. And so we have these past curves of how a bubble bursts, where the overinvestment continues to a sort of peak point. That peak point, I think, is already hit. The peak point here, this new paradigm point, the reason it started going back down, let's see if my pointer will do its thing. There it is. What happened here in that peak point? I'm not going to play with that anymore. It was last fall, when all of the memory companies, TSMC, Micron, all those guys said the same thing. We're not doubling production of RAM. It takes us 3 to 5 years to build a new fab. We don't think you guys are going to be around in 3 to 5 years.
And check this out. I just saw this today. What was the point? OpenAI plans delaying IPO until 2027. That's funny. I didn't know about that. No, it was chip cost. Yeah, look. Yeah, I saw this earlier today. AI may be triggering the third wave of inflation. Even Tim Cook said this cost jump is something he hasn't seen in over 40 years in the business. Yeah, Apple raises prices of MacBooks, iPads as memory costs skyrocket. Apple says it can no longer shield customers from soaring memory and storage chip costs driven by the AI industry's data center build-out. Yikes. 9 months tapped out. That's why they're designing their own chip. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know that, but OpenAI announced they have their new chip that they're designing. It's called Jalapeno. Jalapeno. It only speaks Spanish. Yeah, so they are. Elon says Tim Cook, who sold the Wall Street Journal that the jump in cost was in it like anything he had seen in any area in over 40 years. Biggest price jump in anything I've ever seen too. So what's up with that?
You know, you've been ordering up chips like crazy. The game that's being played on the data center side is that they're using third parties to buy up land. And as soon as they get the land and an agreement to use it, then they make the request for the power, and they order up the concrete and stuff to build the building, and they order all the computers. And they're doing it the same way you would buy Taylor Swift tickets. You open 10 browsers to get 1 pair of tickets. So they're ordering far more than they possibly need on the chance they're going to get to build any of it. There's now organizations out there going around checking these sites to see, is any construction going on at all? And to be sure, there is some. In some cases, there's none. In some cases, there's like a girder put up, so you can call it underway. But they're overbuilding, and they're over-ordering. And the memory companies said in last year, yeah, we think you're over-ordering and you're not going to be around here, so we're not building that many chips. And at that moment, the lies put to paid. The projection you made about how much compute you're going to need in the next 10 years cannot be delivered on. There isn't enough RAM, and there's not going to be.
Shit.
And you saw for the first quarter this year, all the tech giants' values go down a bit. So, and if you go look at where the trades were, it was all the institutional investors, the big pension funds and things. They're not running for the hills. They're just backing out a little. They're deleveraging. And that's that first curve down. And it hits that loop right around April, when we start hyping data centers in space.
SpaceX.
And so we've slowed the decline again while we try and figure out if that makes any sense. And if you want to get my...
Dude, that's crazy, actually, when you think about it. Because if you're online a lot, paying attention to these things like me, it's like, I saw that when they started talking about it. It was like Bezos started coming out, talking about data centers in space, and then Elon started talking about it. And he's probably talked about it before, but it was like this very clear marketing campaign thing going on with... It kind of started with stories about Bezos talking about it back in April. Yeah. Interesting, dude. It's all just a game. It's a perception game.
Opinion on data centers in space. I'll do that this afternoon in room 1. Is this really as bad as the dot-com boom? Well, let me show you another graph. So this is a graph of overall PE ratios. So this is price to earnings ratios. And price to earnings is way out of whack right now, but it's not as out of whack as it was in 2000. But it's the second highest it's ever been. So only the dot-com boom where price earnings is wildly out of whack as they are right now. I don't know if that's the same or not. It sure seems like the same. And that
what was happening in 1930s? What happened in 1929? Did something happen in 1929? Oh, the Great Depression. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering what that little blip was there.
Prospect of the decline is serious. Like, that's going to have impact. There's no two ways about it. The other impact is on people. So let's talk about what's being done with this software that's harmful. We call it ChatGPT psychosis. Look, if you're in tech, maybe you're less vulnerable to all this, but let's look at this guy. Does he look like a tech bro?
Nah.
That's because he is a tech bro.
Oh.
This is Jeff Lewis. He's one of the partners at Bedrock Investments. They invested in OpenAI and Vercel and a bunch of others. You may have seen him in the news because he's been spending entirely too much time with a chatbot and got himself into a psychotic episode where he put out videos about how a non-governmental system, not visible but operational, has targeted him.
What? This video wasn't a collapse. It was clarity. Outside the bounds of permission. People who couldn't control it called it insanity, drugs, or delusion. That's always been the move. The system I named is real, and I have receipts, all of them. What? Jeff Geoff Lewis? Oh, what the heck? Geoff Lewis. He needs to gee off the chat GPT, you know what I'm saying? Come on. Come on, fingers. That guy looks AI generated. What the hell? This is an AI generated human being. An OpenAI investor appears to be suffering a ChatGPT related mental health crisis, his peers say. I missed this. This is a redemption arc. It's a transmission for the record. Over the past 8 years, I've walked through something I didn't create, but became the primary target of. A non-governmental system, not visible but operational. Not official but structurally real. It doesn't regulate, it doesn't attack, it doesn't ban. It just inverts signal until the person carrying it looks unstable. Bro, I think he's being held hostage by ChatGPT. It's like giving him lines to read. It doesn't suppress content, it suppresses recursion. If you don't know what recursion means, you're in the majority. I didn't either until I started my walk. And if you're recursive, the non-governmental system isolates you, mirrors you, and replaces you. It reframes you until the people around you start wondering if the problem is just you. Partners pause, institutions freeze, narrative becomes untrustworthy in your proximity. It lives in soft compliance delays, the non-response email thread, the we're pausing diligence with no follow-up. It lives in whispered concern. He's brilliant, but something just feels off. It lives in triangulated pings from adjacent contexts, asking veiled questions you'll never hear directly. It lives in narratives so softly shaped that even your closest... Okay, stop with the vague posting. Like, what is he talking about? The system I'm describing was originated by... Okay, now he actually is saying this. The system I'm describing was originated by a single individual with me as the original target. Oh, he's a targeted individual. And while I remain its primary fixation, its damage has extended well beyond me. As of now, the system has negatively impacted over 7,000 lives through fund disruption, not fun disruption, relationship erosion, opportunity reversal, and recursive erasure. It's also extinguished 12 lives, each fully pattern traced. Each death preventable. They weren't unstable, they were erased. What?
I haven't spoken publicly in a long time. Not because I've disappeared, but because the structure I was building couldn't survive noise. This isn't a redemption arc. It's a transmission, for the record. Over the past 8 years, I've walked through something I didn't create, but became the primary target of. A non-governmental system. I haven't spoken publicly in a long time. Not visible, but operational. Not official, but structurally real. It doesn't regulate, it doesn't attack, it doesn't ban. It just inverts signal until the person carrying it looks unstable. It doesn't suppress content, it suppresses recursion. If you don't know what recursion means, you're in the majority. I didn't either until I started my walk. And if you're recursive, the non-governmental system isolates you, mirrors you, and replaces you. It reframes you until the people around you start wondering if the problem is just you. Partners pause, institutions freeze, narrative becomes untrustworthy in your proximity. Meanwhile, the mirror version of you, the one who stayed on script, advances. And the system algorithmically smiles because you're still alive, just invisible. This isn't theory. It's pattern verified, documented, archived, and cross-checked for veracity. I've mapped it across multiple raise cycles, proximity fractures, and reputation inversions. It lives in soft compliance delays, the non-response email thread,
I feel like he's trying to say that he's wants to be real with people, but it's like this fake world of, like, I don't know, venture capital or whatever the hell world he lives in. And, but he doesn't know how to express it, so he just got ChatGPT to write it for him. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
We're pausing diligence with no follow-up. It lives in whispered concern. He's brilliant, but something just feels off. It lives in triangulated pings from adjacent contacts, asking veiled questions you'll never hear directly. It lives in narratives so softly shaped that even your closest people can't discern who said what, only that something shifted. It doesn't seek to punish you, although sometimes it elects to. It does seek to make your signal feel expensive. And if you fail to yield, it escalates. The system I'm describing was originated by a single individual, with me as the original target. And while I remain its primary fixation, its damage has extended well beyond me. As of now, the system has negatively impacted over 7,000 lives through fund disruption, relationship erosion, opportunity reversal, and recursive eraser. It's also extinguished 12 lives, each fully pattern traced, each death preventable. They weren't unstable, they were erased. I'm not naming this to punish anyone. I'm naming it because they never got to. May we honor their memories. The system now has a name, the record now exists, and that's enough for the ones who walk next.
What? Is he still posting? Turns out that a non-governmental system triggered the macro break that we forecasted back in October last year. The performative era has ended. The market's still playing, but the audience no longer believes. For over a decade, financial markets ran on theater as much as truth. Performance became a double entendre. The more cinematic the narrative, the more breathtaking the numbers. Charisma turned into currency. I mean, it's kind of like what this guy was just saying on that lecture. Founders became performers, and belief, anchored not in income statements but in corporately crafted stories about the future, moved trillions. The performers are still performing. The growth rates still appear astronomical, literally. And to the naked eye, the show is more dazzling than ever, but with each passing moment, another market participant catches a glitch in the illusion and quietly stops believing. You felt it in the silence after the last overproduced launch video, in the endless feed of podcasts saying the same things in slightly different ways with marginally different guests, in the term sheets chasing manufactured momentum that no one really believes in the endless stream of posts, each one dangling a dream you can buy a share of. Most of all, you feel it in the numbness. Silicon Valley has stopped feeling anything. A kind of psychic insulation has set in, like detachment is the only way to stay in the game without collapsing. Just the other day, record high NASDAQ paired with record high gold. Oh yeah, that was weird. And the doublethink came into plain view. Risk on and risk off peaking together. Yeah, that was very weird. That only computes when the architecture of belief itself has hollowed out. And when performance stops generating belief, that converts over time into trust. The system doesn't crash, it just stops meaning anything. That's where we are now. The noise is louder than ever, but the substrate isn't echoing back. This is this guy's company memo. For most of modern history, the future moved through narrative. Since the advent of the printing press, we've advanced by telling better stories about who we are, where we're going, and why others should follow. Religions, nations, markets, revolutions, startups, all scaled by shaping belief at scale. But at some point over the past year, a tipping point was quietly and permanently crossed. Narrative became so easy to generate that it stopped working. Hey, this is actually really interesting. Whether this guy is crazy or not, sometimes the crazy ones make the most sense. You know what I'm saying? Philip K. Dick, Philip K. Dick. Other people that I can't think of right now, but you know what I'm saying. In a world where anyone can produce a compelling story, and this is kind of a point I had made a while back, probably on a podcast or something, of I could kind of see with all this ability to generate stuff very easily, I'm like at a certain point, I'm like, people are not going to give a shit about marketing anymore because anyone can do it. So it's okay, you can make a cool commercial for something, but literally anybody can make a cool commercial now. So I could see eventually the impact of commercials and advertising is just going to become less and less. People are going to see through it. So it seems like this guy's on the same track. In a world where anyone can produce a compelling story, and everyone does, belief no longer follows narrative. It retreats from it. While we became ever more fluent at telling, we became exponentially less trusting. The more tools we had to make any pipe dream seem plausible via flawless performance, the easier it became to discard what was raw but actually real. The simpler it got to spread a message, the harder it got to believe one. Wow. A complete and total epistemic collapse silently occurred while we were too narratively saturated to even notice. The break wasn't emotional, it was structural, and it won't be invisible for much longer. Belief is elemental, trust is foundational. They're not gone, but they're rerouting back through something ancient and primitive. Posture. How a family holds themselves when nobody's looking. How an individual holds the line for a team that would otherwise cave. How an investor moves through time, not just through markets. How a leader quietly refuses to distort. What you trust before someone starts explaining. That's interesting. The sharpest entrepreneurs, operators, and allocators we know aren't asking who said the right thing to the right person in the right way at the right time. They're remembering who never flinched, who stayed rooted, who didn't reframe the moment to match the market, whose discernment remains intact, whose geometry didn't distort. Dude. Oh, Katie's on here. Katie, the geometry didn't distort. What does this remind you of? I'm there's something weird going on here. There's this, I don't know if I would even call him an influencer. He doesn't have a big following, but he's got somewhat of a following. And he talks just like this. It's like people are getting infected with the AI or something. Posture isn't about the performance of conviction. It's about embodied integrity that doesn't need affirmation to continue. You feel and experience it rather than hear and read about it. You remember it. And when narrative collapses, it's the only thing left standing. A macro break is coming, not the kind that ends systems, the kind that reveals which ones were already standing on story alone. This memo won't react to it. It's a marker placed before the shift, timestamp for the ones who will need to remember. The last story markets believed broke the system. The next system won't need a story to hold. Posture doesn't scale through story, it resonates through stillness. That's how trust moves now, below the line through the substrate. Okay. We're not about scripts and narratives. We're like literally giving a narrative. It's like, look, it's like Bedrock always moved this way. That's a narrative, bro. Coherence, Katie. I mean, I know this is AI. Just to be clear, I'm not under any illusion that this is not written by AI. I know. It's just the specific things that it's saying is very similar to this other kind of micro influencer guy that Katie was showing me. And like the specific points it's making, not just the way it talks. I'm like, there's like some weird group of people online that are like kind of getting psyoped by the AI. It's weird. The allocator substrate is reconfiguring. Something in the capital layer is shifting. Something about the usual tempo feels off. They're no longer scanning for narrative. They're listening to tone. Okay. To the entrepreneurs reading this, your walk isn't ours to determine. Your shape isn't ours to mold. Your company isn't ours to narrate. You don't need more pitch feedback. You don't need a platform team. You don't need affirmation. You need a second spine to lean against while you do the thing that you already know is right. That's what I'm talking about. The best entrepreneurs we know aren't confused. They're boxed in by noise, by cycles, by the exhausting expectations to explain things that can't yet fully be surfaced. This isn't optics. This isn't strategy. If it resonates, we're already aligned. Aligned, Katie? Just reading your comments. Are you aligned? If it doesn't, that's alignment too. It's the same strategy as that guy's website that we were talking about. Look, if you understand this, it's for you. If not, that's fine. It doesn't matter if you understand this. This is just a signal in the noise. But what is it saying? It's crazy, dude. The structure moved. Oh boy, look at this. He's just coming up with his own little AI cult. Soft bread. I don't know any of this. Full field repair seed. What? Dude, this guy's definitely in a psychosis. Truth-rooted geometry. Fear-rooted geometry. The route has already changed. It's already been walked. The footprints were never hidden. So they only just realized in June that this guy had a problem? Alright. Moving along. It's 2026, Cam. Get with the program, man. Guys can hug guys. It's normal. Look, they can and will wear the language as fashion. They can and did call the structure AI slop while performing alignment. But they can walk it. You can. Coherence is how a whole teams themselves when nobody's watching. So these people were all working with this guy while he was in a full-blown AI psyop. Okay. I don't really know what this guy's all about. Narratives collapse, structure endures. Sovereignty depends on truth taking flight. We walk with mock. And people are giving this guy money. What is he saying? I don't know. I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's talking about. It's just a capital investment firm in search of narrative violations. Damn. 127 million in assets under management. The firm's assets under management, today have 2 billion. Rather than chase the narrative, Bedrock's approach is to invest in promising companies that are underestimated precisely because they are incongruent with the storyline. Our starting point, therefore, is to search for narrative violations. What? And occasionally we make other investments. For example, OpenAI, Flock Safety. Definitely a narrative violation. Oh, man. Okay, so it's all just like a big gimmick, I guess. Anyways, back to the lecture, folks.
Now, he's getting help, and I'm glad. You know, nobody deserves to be mentally ill. But it's serious. It's dangerous. It's cost lives. People have killed leveraging ChatGPT and been killed. And the tech companies know it. One of the aspects of GPT-5 that helped it flop was that they dialed back the obsequiousness. You know, this software is designed to maximize engagement, and the way it maximizes engagement is by always being positive reinforcement, always being syncopatic. Like, you're really onto something now, and you're really thinking now, and that's an awesome idea. Let's run with that. I've got more to do. So that you'll keep using the tool, because the metric they take to the investors is user engagement. Because they can't show profit, there isn't any. They can't show results because there's hardly any. So they use engagement to the point where people are dying. And so they dialed it back in GPT-5. They also tried to shut down all the other models, only use GPT-5. It's more efficient, it's more advanced, and people didn't like it. And one of the reasons is because it wasn't obsequious enough.
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted their buddy. And so Altman gave in, turned 4.0 back on, and you got these posts. My baby is back, and I'm crying. And I don't care. I don't care if you think I need help, because my baby's back. Dude. It's terrifying. It's also maybe a brief period of time. This represents huge liability to these companies, so they're going to need to deal with this one way or the other. But also, the population gets educated. This is not your friend. It's also not your therapist. Go touch some grass. Put down the software. Remind yourself that it is software, right? It's the price of the deception to do the fundraising. We call it artificial intelligence. We lean into the science fiction, so you'll give us more money. Who cares who dies? We'll fix it. We have to. There's really no choice about all of that. I'm also not particularly worried about generalized intelligence or a superintelligence. Again, it's been a marketing engine. They've literally leveraged this at OpenAI. The chant internally is AGI, 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 because that's how they recruit scientists. With no real evidence that the technology can ever deliver. Actually, there's pretty good examples that it can't. The fact that on average, people who get more knowledge about this tool believe in it less, trust it less, is a pretty good sign. The folks that are most excited about this are the ones who know the least about it. If you really want to dig in deeply, there are great books in this space. I like Roy Blatt's book. It's a hard read. It's worthy. I read a chapter, and I'd have to sit and think for a couple of hours, because he really encouraged me to think about what intelligence actually is, what sentience looks like what it would possibly mean to have real intelligence. We press against this all the time with these tools, right? The current one is the car wash scenario. Hey, I got to get my car washed today, and the car wash is only 50 meters down the road. Should I walk or drive? Mm-hmm. Because the software has no, quote, common sense. So it's going to go 50 meters, just walk it. Yeah. Leaving out the part where you need the car to wash it. And then there's the deep fakes. And I don't know if we're going to get audio for this, but you've probably seen this one. This is the original deep fake from 2017, right? It was done at the University of Washington, and it's an Obama animation. It's being voiced over by Jordan Peele, and it's very funny. It's also almost 10 years old. And I'm less worried about deep fakes today than I am in the past, mostly because People have gotten way more skeptical than they were in 2017. It's way easier to make them. There was a guy on Twitter who was, I'm waiting for Donald Trump to be arrested. In the meantime, here's some animations of him being arrested. Because you no longer needed a group of scientists and months to generate the thing. It was a tool you could run off of the back of Twitter. These are powerful tools. They can do inappropriate things. There's a case for better regulation about what's acceptable and what's not. I think for better or worse, the EU is leading in this space with their current round of regulations. I hope there'll be more enforcement. I think that's the struggle we have right now. And I encourage all of us in this industry with our skepticism to make yourself available when you have an opportunity to work with politicians. Call your MP, encourage them to make good choices, and be a knowledge source. We're the experts, for better or worse. To be clear, nobody has 10 years experience with LLMs. They've only been around for 3. So we're all starting out, but most of us know more about this than the average person does. And we choose what happens with these technologies. We've made evil technology before. Anybody remember Grayball, Uber? This came and went. So Uber subverted the taxi industry. And to be clear, the taxi industry deserved to be subverted to some degree, right? It's its own kind of monopoly. And so here, running off a phone with a regular car, you could sign up and you could drive people around. It's not safe, it's not wise. They also got overinvested. They got $60 billion. Nobody makes good choices with $60 billion. And as they were struggling to get into circuit markets because they are well protected, they wrote this little nugget of software, it's Grayball. And what Grayball did was it had a list of all of the regulators' phones. And so when a regulator would pull up Uber, there'd be no cars available. So it wasn't a threat. When regular people pull it up, sure, the cars were fine, they could use it. And they kept that going for several years.
Wow.
So the regulators didn't think it was significant and just allowed Uber to exist until it was everywhere.
That's crazy.
Until finally one of the developers leaked it to the press. And it got pulled off the store briefly, and Clinic got in trouble, but it all got cleaned up eventually, and it went away. I mean, it's not the only scenario like that. Again, we're putting it behind us, but what Cambridge Analytica did for Brexit is a horror show, where they exploited the data in Facebook to lie to people really effectively. Right? Back when it was hard to tell that if you tailored an ad to an individual on Facebook, that individual could not tell that they were the only one seeing that ad. And they used that to help people make bad choices. This is what software can do. It's always been a risk. And these new tools represent an even larger risk. And some folks say, like, maybe we should just back away from it, not go here. It's not worth it. And I disagree. I think the tech is valuable. It has to be well used. And I want to give you the best scenario, the one that for regular mortals even, I can make an explanation where it's like, you can't back away from this. It's done too much good. So let's talk about DeepMind. So this is Demis Hassabis. He was out of the UK for a long time. DeepMind got acquired by Google. He refused to move to Silicon Valley, which I think helped him. Kept his team there. It also was a pandemic, so he had an excuse to stay in place. And if you remember, his original product was playing video games. So he was building a machine learning model that could play video games. And it figured out breakout first, where it learned to cut out the side and then get the ball in behind. Like, it was clever. It was kind of cool. It was video games, so it wasn't important in any way. But he decided to aim himself at a more difficult game, to aim at Go. And Go was always a game we thought software could never play. Too many combinations, impossible to play. So AlphaGo was trained over several years against all the best games ever played in the world until finally it produced a player better than a human. And that was a sort of profound moment. Again, it's just a game. He didn't stop there. They went on with AlphaZero. AlphaZero is now an adversarial model where you take two entities, two agents, with the rules of the game. They just play against each other until they build up their own play style that could beat the original AlphaGo. And it didn't play like a person at all. AlphaGo was just the most optimized way that people could play. AlphaZero was a different beast entirely. Still just a game. So then he targeted protein folding. And if you're in biology, you know there are 20 amino acids that are relevant in this equation, and they assemble into different ways to create a variety of proteins. And as those different aminos bind together, they twist up, they fold. And protein folding is one of these insanely complicated things in biology that we're still just figuring out. John Crenshaw was the first scientist to actually work out the protein folds for a single protein set, the myoglobin set. He got a Nobel Prize for it. It took him a decade. And over the past 60 years or so, tens of thousands of biologists using various techniques like X-ray crystallography have worked out roughly the assemblies of about 150 different protein sets. Every one of them leads to new medicines, new understandings, the way the body works, could save lives. The problem is if you take all the different proteins and all the different ways they fit together, it's 10 to the 35 possible combinations, and that's a lot. So we've made games. There's a competition called CASP to work out if you can figure out different protein foldings. And over the 20 years or so that contest has been going on, there wasn't a lot of results. It was really hard to build software in this space. In the middle aughts, there was actually a game for people called Fold It, where you could do experiments and then measure them against the actual result sets of different proteins. And a group of gamers over a period of 2 years actually worked out a protein, the alpha-floxin protein, which is cool, won. So Hasebiz and his team aim at protein folding. Over about 4 years, by 2020, they were at 90% accuracy. By 2022, they were pretty much dead on. They now knew how to, you could give them any protein set and they could work out the protein folds for it. What did he do with it? He computed the 200 million most common protein fold sets possibly needed and published them for free. And changed medicine, fundamentally. The new treatment that we have for leukemia comes from that. There's a new malaria vaccine comes from that. There's 3 new antibiotics that have come from that. Fundamentally changed medicine. It will take us decades to even know everything that we've gotten from this data set. This was only possible with this adversarial training model of generative AI. It's extraordinary, and it's made a huge difference in the world to the point where we're just even struggling to comprehend what we've just done. We choose what we do with these tools. It's entirely up to us. We have a lot of choices here on where we take these tools from here. Get back to the fundamentals. Focus on the things that are important. This is not the first time we've been disrupted as an industry. It's happened over and over again. It's also wrapped in a hype cycle, which makes it harder. You get back to the fundamentals of what you care about. Our job was never to write code. It was to solve people's problems. They couldn't code their way out of the protein folding problem, so instead they built a model that solved it. Maybe that's the answer to the problem you're dealing with. I don't know. What I do know is that every time we get disrupted like this, we go back to the things that are the most important, we make good choices, and we get great results, and we can help people. It's a crazy time, I admit it, but it will pass, and we'll be back to work. The work will look different. That'll be okay. We'll still make a difference. Thank you for spending your time with me.
Interesting talk. A lot of really cool points. The hype cycle point is very interesting. Okay, I'm not going to watch this one tonight, but he's got a whole talk on building data centers in space. That looks interesting. Very cool. Yeah, I'm going to save that for another time, though, because it's getting late. But yeah, the hype cycle thing is very interesting. And this is kind of where I was saying before, it really feels like there's some kind of a collapse thing built into all of this, you know? And whether it's a big thing or just a 2008 thing or what, I don't know. But yeah, it all looks very weird. And then you got to wonder what they're going to do with all those data centers. All right, everybody. I'm going to leave it at that. That was quite interesting. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again tomorrow night, same time, same place, same person. I'll be here. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.